electrician knows how to connect the wire to the right place to let the current flow. So Dadi is a bit of an electrician. She knows how to join the wires together.
When she was with you, you had her attention 100%. And she made you feel special. She made you feel that nobody mattered in that moment except you.
I stopped in front of her and she actually said something to me that was, to me, it was so powerful. And all of a sudden, I completely started sobbing. And I want to tell you, no one has ever made me cry in my entire life. I mean, even when my parents died, I didn't shed a tear. I don't cry.
कहाँ जाएंगे? 12 बजे यहाँ टीचर्स आएंगी. She does this every time I put powder on. She takes my sari and she wipes her face with it.
Behind those fragile little hands, there is a great story to tell. A story that is now more than 100 years old. It's an extraordinary story, one that speaks to the heart of humanity.
Also, wherever she goes, she'll always go to Baba's room before she leaves.
For the past 20 years, Hansa Chapaneri has witnessed this story unfold, looking after Dadi with tireless care wherever she goes.
बाबा को मिलके फिर खाएंगे. ऐसे भी खा सकते हैं ना याद में.
I think right from the young age, I've always been a caring person, and especially with the elderly. And when I used to look at Dadi, I used to feel how nice it would be to look after Dadi. Just very subtle. When Dadi used to be going to different programs in the UK, 1 hour, 2 hour drive, I used to really feel for her that everybody's gone to sleep and how will Dadi come in and she has to climb these stairs and she might need something, she might want something. How can I go to sleep? Everybody's gone to sleep. Who will help her? I used to have these feelings,
Every detail is highly significant in Dadi's story, every step she took. And 20 years ago, Hansa could never have imagined the journey that would give Dadi the power to touch so many lives.
She is the one who opened the door of my heart to allow God to come in. It happened in the first week of April in 1968. Which date out of that first week I can't tell you, but it happened. What happened was she spoke to me about conscience, and that was a very important trigger because I'd been thinking about choices and how to make choices and feeling that I didn't have enough capacity to be able to make my choice. Permissive society, Western traditional society, Hindu society, I didn't know which way to go. And she picked up on that. And so she talked to me about cleaning the conscience. And I said, how? She said, meditation. So then I came back that same evening to start my course. So the first day was the awareness of the soul, and I felt as if I was flying home, I wasn't walking home. And then when she gave me that drishti, it lifted me into another realm, and gave me that experience of connecting with God's love.
Janki Kirpalani and her mother always had a close connection with the founder of the Brahma Kumaris, Brahma Baba. Janki's grandfather was Brahma's cousin. She met Brahma for the first time at the age of 8 and completely dedicated herself to follow his teachings 11 years later, at the age of 19.
And if we want to tell the story of Dadi and open the book of her life, it would be hard to find someone more qualified than her.
And guess who this is? Very, very young Dadi.
Sister Janki, as she is now called, knows Dadi's life literally by heart and all the details behind almost every picture.
You can see Dadi in her little jacket.
Dadi's story is what she calls the story of a spiritual genius.
Dadi's earliest memory is of being 2 years of age in her cradle, and she was hearing her uncle chant the name of Rama, the name of God. And so she was born into a very religious family, a philanthropic family. Her parents decided that rather than put her in a normal school, a pandit would come home and would teach her at home from the scriptures. And this continued till age 9. And at that time then she went to school just for 3 years, and in 3 years she managed to pass 6 different levels. She was a bright student, as you can imagine. And age 11, she said to her father, it was time to study science at school. And she said to her father that science might change my mind about God and take me away from God. And I don't want that to happen. So let me have my further education by going on pilgrimage. And so her father shut up shop and took her on pilgrimage to the 4 corners of India.
आपको याद है वो कौन सी घड़ी थी ये फोटो की?
And the question that she had for the sages that she would meet on her pilgrimages was, tell me your experience of God. Don't talk to me about God or what the scriptures say. Tell me your personal experience. And from the blank look in their eyes, she knew that it was something they were striving for, but they hadn't yet come to. It tells me that this has been the whole of her life. There hasn't been any other interest in her life except to know God and to know the self, and secondly, to serve humanity.
Not far from where Dadi lived, another story was just about to unfold. The story of Dada Lekraj. Born in a very religious family, the son of a school teacher in Hyderabad in the state of Sindh, Dada Lekraj had been on a spiritual quest since the early 1930s. When he was approaching his age of retirement, he underwent a series of visionary experiences that would transform him completely. Seeking a higher understanding of God and divine truth, he created a spiritual gathering called Om Mandali, which later would become the Brahma Kumaris. And just a few months before he passed away, Sister Janki already had decided which path to follow. She would quickly become one of the main voices of the Brahma Kumaris outside of India, and a brilliant spokesperson to make the teachings known at all levels of society.
What did you do to it?
I fell over the handlebars of my bike. I went to pick up the laundry.
Now based in London, Sister Janki knows how much Dadi Janki's spiritual presence can impact those she meets. Lord Stone came to know Dadi and the Brahma Kumaris over 20 years ago, about the same time he joined the House of Lords in England. Thus began 20 years of spiritual friendship that would bring a new perspective to his work around the world.
Because I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic and not talented, I don't think in a logical, linear, linguistic way, I read people's sort of vibrations. And what I get from here is that the vibration is just full of love and compassion, and that's what makes me trust them and know that they can be trusted. What the Brahma Kumaris and Daddy Janki in particular taught me was that there isn't only one truth. That there's your truth, Andrew, from your culture, and there's their truth from their culture. And that what you have to do is to open your heart and realize that people have different truths. And the trick is to work out how these different truths can live together. And therefore, you listen to somebody more intently. You understand why they believe what they believe, and you accept that they believe that, and you know that you believe something else, and then say, well, how can we work this out together? Now, this has been massively helpful for me. I'm working at the moment with Palestinians and Israelis and Egyptians and Jordanians, and what I'm able to do, and they all can feel this, is that I understand their narrative. I believe it, and I believe it as their narrative. I don't believe it as my narrative, and I try and share mine and say, look, how can we work this together? When Daddy Janki talks to 500 people in a room, she doesn't talk to the crowd, she talks to everybody individually. You see her looking at everybody's eyes, even though she does drishti afterwards. Even when she talks, she looks at every individual as she's talking. In fact, she sits for a moment and looks at everybody, and then everybody knows that she's talking to them. And that's how she enables them to get in touch with their best part.
To enable others to get in touch with their best part, this could well summarize Dadi's life. Now well over 100 years old, her love for her close friends is always moving to watch. Her fragile little hands and her magic eyes seem to have served all her life to do just that, to enable others to get in touch with their best part. In 2010, Daddy Janki decided to revisit where it all started for her. For the first time in over 60 years, she returned to Pakistan, to what had been the Indian state of Sindh before the partition of India. This was where she was born in 1916. In 1937, Brahma Baba had just created a trust to which he surrendered his wealth. The trust was composed of young women to look after the growth of the movement. For Daddy Janki, this was walking in the footprints of her past, when she met Brahma for the first time in that year of 1937.
She was out in the park in the early morning hours with her father, and she saw this person coming towards them. And afterwards, she said to her father, "Did you see that?" And it was clear that he hadn't noticed anything different. It was just courtesy and hello, and you move on. But what she saw was light. She didn't see this man, she saw this amazing glow of light. And that made her understand that something very unique had happened. And when she investigated further, she found the teachings that were being shared through this man.
At that time, Dadi was only 21 years old, and before being able to fully join the group, she had to find ways to leave a painful marriage that was imposed upon her. When Dadi finally moved in with the other women, she was asked to take on a very special responsibility.
And at that point, she was asked to become the nurse for the community. And she took on that role of nursing anybody who was not well and taking care of them, even though her own physical health had never been strong. She'd already been through pneumonia and TB and all sorts of things. But her love for service was such that she took that on, and they only called a doctor twice within the space of 14 years for a community of around 300. I think people found her a bit of a loner, They found her too serious, and they respected her and admired her for what she was doing. And of course, most of them were beneficiaries from her medical care at some point. But generally, the feeling was she is a loner and she's too serious.
But these years were, for Dadi Janki, an opportunity to create the foundation of what would become her unique ability to impact others in such profound ways. She poured herself into her love for study and her love for God. For the first 14 years of the institution, the men and women that joined almost completely isolated themselves from the rest of the world and focused on their relationship with God and their spiritual study.
Other people didn't recognize her because the work she was doing was quite physical. They had no idea of the intense work that was going on in the laboratory of her own mind and the way in which she was reflecting